Roar, crunch, rev, squelch. That was the morning soundtrack on what used to be my peaceful slice of paradise. The sun wasn't even up, birds were still thinking about chirping, and here comes a neon pink ATV barreling across my lawn like it was the Daytona 500. My land, my grass, my peace, torn up by tread marks and entitlement. And who's at the wheel? Karen, of course. Helmet too big for her head, attitude even bigger. She didn't wave, she didn't explain, she just looked at me like I was the one trespassing. I figured it was a one-time thing, a wrong turn. But no, this was only the beginning. The ATV came back, again and again and again. It wasn't an accident. It was a declaration of war. And when I finally decided to follow her, to see where this queen of HOA chaos was going, well, that's when everything changed. Karen didn't ride that ATV. She commanded it, like a general in pink camo leading a one-woman war against decency and boundary lines. I'd never seen someone so committed to driving like she owned every square inch of land within a mile radius. Her outfit screamed midlife crisis meets backyard apocalypse, matching sunglasses, fanny pack, and an air of HOA righteousness. She never once asked for permission, never slowed down. Every time she tore through my property, she locked eyes with me like I was the intruder. The first time I stopped her, she revved the engine and rolled her eyes. "This is an OTA-maintained trail," she said, with a voice like glitter and vinegar. "I have every right to be here." I blinked. "Karen, I'm not even in the HOA." She waved me off. "Doesn't matter. All paths fall under HOA jurisdiction." That's when I knew logic wouldn't help. Karen had crowned herself queen of the neighborhood, and my backyard was her kingdom. The first few days, I kept thinking she'd get bored, that maybe the novelty of roaring through my yard would wear off. It didn't. Morning, noon, sometimes well after sunset, her ATV's growl would break the silence like a chainsaw in a church. Rain, she'd splash through puddles like it was a rally race. Holiday? She'd decorate the front of her ATV with little flags and still blow past my bushes like a patriotic missile. I tried everything. You ask, you warn, you plead. Nothing changes. Each time I confronted her, she had a new excuse. The HOA says it's a shared trail. This land has always been open for community use. And the classic, "You're just jealous because you don't have an ATV." I almost choked laughing at that one. Jealous of the woman who just splattered mud across my grill and waved like I was a parade spectator? No, Karen. This wasn't envy. This was the slow simmer of a man watching his lawn turn into a tire track buffet, and realizing that if he didn't do something, she'd pave her own off-ramp straight through his soul. I tried calling the HOA. I tried reason, but this was no longer a misunderstanding. This was an invasion on four wheels and powered by entitlement. It had rained all night, the kind of rain that turns soil to soup and grass into a swamp. So when I saw that familiar flash of pink come roaring around the corner, I didn't even get off the porch. I just sipped my coffee and waited. Sure enough, squelch. Her ATV sank, rear wheels spinning helplessly in the mud, like a hamster in a blender. She flailed dramatically, arms waving like she'd been shot. Then she saw me. "This is your fault," she screeched, pointing at me like I'd summoned the weather. I raised an eyebrow. "How?" "You should have put up a sign." "A sign?" She crossed her arms. "Yeah, like warning soft ground, or something." I laughed. "You want me to put up a sign warning people not to drive across private property they don't own?" Her face went crimson. "It's still your fault." "No, Karen," I said, calmly sipping my coffee. It rained. After the mud fiasco, I paid the HOA office a visit. A dimly lit building with 3 people who looked like they hadn't slept since the last barbecue complaint. When I explained what Karen had been doing, they exchanged looks. "Yeah," one of them finally said. "She's persistent." That's all we got. No enforcement, no consequences. Just shrugged shoulders and caffeine fatigue. But as I left, one board member, a guy named Chad, pulled me aside. "Listen," he whispered, If you want her gone, you've got to out-Karen her, play her game. And with that, the real plan began. I'll give Chad credit. He didn't have to say anything. He could have kept sipping his HOA-approved coffee and watched from a distance while Karen left flaming skid marks through my life. But he didn't. She only breaks when cornered by her own rules, he told me quietly, like he was leaking state secrets. She believes in the HOA the way kids believe in Santa. But if you show her she's the one on the naughty list, she crumbles. That stuck with me, because up until now I was playing defense, pleading for peace. But if Karen wanted to play HOA Monopoly, then it was time I flipped the board. The next morning, I waited. As usual, the ATV revved to life like a war drum, and as it tore across my lawn, I pressed record on my phone and followed. No yelling, no confrontation, just quiet steps, me walking the same path she had destroyed daily. When she finally spotted me, her reaction was Oscar-worthy. She skidded to a halt, flung off her helmet like it offended her, and shrieked, "You're trespassing!" I blinked. What now? "You can't follow me," she snapped. "This is private HOA property." "Karen," I said as gently as possible, "we are still on my land." She pointed at her imaginary border lines. "I don't care. You're harassing me." I stared, stunned at the irony. She'd spent weeks driving through my lawn like she was late for a demolition derby, and now I was the problem. For walking? "I'm just following your logic," I said calmly. "If this is a community trail, we all share it, right?" Her face turned fire hydrant red. "You'll regret this." I smiled. "Maybe, but at least I'll have it on video." It didn't take long. 10 minutes after her meltdown, a squad car rolled into the neighborhood. Karen was already in performance mode, wringing her hands like a soap opera villain mid-monologue. "He was stalking me," she gasped, "lurking in the bushes. I feared for my life." The officers, 2 of them, exchanged glances. One approached me while the other gently tried to slow Karen's verbal avalanche. "Sir, can you tell me what happened?" I nodded, pulled out my phone, and played the footage. No drama, no chasing, no lurking. Just me, walking across my own yard, filming a grown woman tearing through mud on a hot pink ATV. The officer watched for maybe 30 seconds before turning back to his partner. "He was on his own property," he said, "and she's not denying she's been cutting through it for weeks." Karen's voice cracked. "That's not the point. He followed me." The younger officer raised an eyebrow. "Onto his own land?" She stammered. "He was intimidating." "Ma'am," the officer said, tone soft but final, "you've been illegally accessing private property. This isn't an HOA matter. That's trespassing." Karen went silent, just for a second, like someone hit mute on the chaos. The truth didn't have to shout. It just played the tape. The silence didn't last. Later that day, Chad sent me a link to a thread on the community forum. Karen had launched a full-blown smear campaign. "Urgent, unsafe individual in neighborhood," the post read. She claimed I was harassing her, threatening her, even endangering children. Attached was a digital petition, her attempt to rally the neighborhood against me. 0 signatures. Not even her husband's name appeared. Most of the comments were things like, "Maybe just stop driving through people's yards," and "Karen, take a nap." I'll admit I laughed harder than I should have. Her plan to turn the community into her personal army had backfired harder than her stuck ATV. The neighborhood wasn't rallying with her. They were tired of her, and they were watching. It was time to strike back, not with rage, but with research. I dug into the HOA handbook, every outdated page, every poorly written clause. And there it was, clear as day. Karen's beloved ATV? Not registered. Her shed, too close to the property line. Her decorative gnome army? Banned by HOA regulation April 12th. No whimsical figures exceeding 18 inches. And Karen had a gnome castle. I gathered it all, compiled it with timestamps and photos, and sent it directly to the HOA board. This time, they couldn't ignore it. Within a week, Karen was hit with multiple violations, each carrying a hefty fine. The same rulebook she had waved like a sword? Now it was turning on her. And for the first time, Karen wasn't writing. She was reeling. The first email came on a Monday morning, as sweet and cold as revenge, served through bureaucratic headers. The HOA had reviewed my formal complaint, and to my absolute delight, they found Karen in violation of 3 separate codes. The shed, over the line. The gnomes, too tall, too many, and too ironically whimsical. And the ATV, not registered and not authorized for off-road use within neighborhood limits. Fines were levied, notices were taped to her front door in that classic passive-aggressive HOA fashion, bold fonts, underlined citations, and no room for rebuttal. Karen's reaction was seismic. She stormed through her yard in a bathrobe and flip-flops, yanking gnomes from the soil like weeds, muttering curses that even her lawn ornaments seemed offended by. But the true shift didn't come from the fines, it came from the whispers. Slowly, like the first cracks in ice before a pond breaks open, the neighborhood turned. People who had once nodded politely to Karen now crossed the street when she walked by. One evening, while I was putting out my trash bins, a neighbor I barely knew leaned over and said under his breath, "We've waited years for this." Another one, a mom pushing a stroller, gave me a thumbs up and whispered, "Thank you." Word had gotten out. The unspoken fear that Karen wielded the HOA like a weapon was beginning to fade. Now she was the one facing it. And people loved to watch the Queen of Citations get cited herself. You could feel the power shifting. Not with fireworks or speeches, just silence. That Karen-shaped silence where people used to cower and were now quietly rooting for her to finally shut up. But Karen didn't do quiet. The following morning, a new sign appeared in the strip of grass near the trail that led into my property. It wasn't official, but she'd tried to make it look that way. A white board with blocky black letters. Premonitory way no trespassing enforced by board authority. Below that, a second sign, violators will be reported immediately. It was ridiculous. It looked like something ordered off a shady website selling tactical garden flags. I stood there for a moment, sipping my coffee, just admiring the sheer desperation of it. Then I walked back into my house, typed up a short letter to the HOA, with photographic evidence, of course, and dropped it into their community inbox. Later that evening, I left a sticky note on the back of the sign that read, "False signage is a violation under HOA Clause 7.2, just a friendly reminder." The next morning, the sign was gone. No one saw who removed it, but I like to imagine Karen dragging it away at dawn, sunglasses on, hoodie up, defeated but too proud to admit it. Of course, she couldn't leave it there. The very next HOA meeting turned into a full-blown theatrical production. Karen came in hot, storming into the room like she was preparing for a legal duel. Clipboard in hand, she marched to the front and demanded the board add a new item to the agenda, proposal for mandatory removal of hostile homeowners. I nearly choked on my complimentary cookie. As the meeting stumbled into order, she launched into a rant about community cohesion and unneighborly conduct, pointing at me the entire time like I was some kind of suburban menace. "He's a disruption," she declared. "He follows people, he files complaints, he is creating division." I raised my hand. "You mean I followed you on my own property?" A few people laughed. Karen's face twitched. That's when she pulled out her bombshell, her petition, the same one that had failed online. "I am submitting a formal request that we consider action to have this homeowner removed for the good of the neighborhood." The room went still. Even Chad, sitting at the end of the table, blinked like he'd just walked into the wrong movie. "You want me gone because you broke the rules?" I asked. "Huh." Karen looked around, realized how alone she was, and doubled down. "It's about the spirit of the neighborhood." Chad raised an eyebrow. "Karen, you filed 5 violations last year. All of them were thrown out," Linda, another board member, added dryly. "You tried to fine a teenager for putting up Halloween lights on October 1st. Karen stammered. Her petition had one signature, hers. No one else wanted to sign a crusade based on ego. When she finally realized it, she sat down without a word, her her paper trembling in her hands. The rebellion had begun, not with shouting, not with fire, but with laughter, citations, and gnome removal orders. And for the first time in a long time, the neighborhood didn't feel like her kingdom anymore. It felt like home. It started with a knock, sharp, bureaucratic, and way too early for a Saturday. Standing on my porch was a man in a reflective vest, holding a clipboard, squinting at the lot markers like they'd insulted his family. "Are you aware," he began, "that there's been a zoning complaint filed against your property?" I blinked. "Let me guess. Karen?" He gave a tight-lipped shrug. "Can't say. But this isn't the first complaint I've received in this neighborhood." I handed him a copy of my property deed with a smile. "Well, have fun." Less than 10 minutes later, after confirming the property lines were exactly where they were supposed to be, he gave a low whistle and said, "Funny thing, looks like her property is actually encroaching onto public land." I nearly dropped my coffee. "Come again?" He pointed down at his clipboard. "Fence and shed. 2 feet over the legal line." The irony hit me like a sitcom punchline. Karen, the self-declared queen of community compliance, was now the biggest zoning violator in the cul-de-sac. Over the next few days, the details spilled out like gossip over picket fences. Turns out Karen's infamous backyard shed, home to countless HOA complaint forms, passive-aggressive signage, and probably some unlicensed gnome schematics, was sitting a full 2 feet onto city-managed green space. Same for her white vinyl fence, which she'd once used as a barrier against what she called visual noise. Translation, my barbecue setup. She had built everything with the same confidence she argued with, loud and without a permit. The city gave her 2 options: pay thousands to have the structures moved, or eat an even bigger fine and risk lien proceedings. It wasn't just a paperwork slip, it was a full-blown zoning violation with teeth. And the best part? All of it happened because she tried to get me in trouble. She yelled about inches, Chad muttered at the next HOA board meeting, but stole feet. Karen didn't take it well. The HOA, now trying to distance themselves from her stunts, was forced to publicly post the violation list as part of the annual transparency mandate. There it was, bold and undeniable. Property line encroachment, Lot 32. Karen, the same board that once tiptoed around her, now treated her like a radioactive lawn ornament. Whispers followed her at the grocery store. A few neighbors openly giggled when she walked past. And the fines? Let's just say her weekly trips to the mailroom involved a lot more scowling. That day, I caught her in the middle of her yard, wearing garden gloves and pure rage. She was tearing her fence down, one vinyl plank at a time, muttering curse words under her breath like a villain monologuing to herself. When she spotted me watching from my porch, she locked eyes with me. "Happy now?" she hissed, clutching a broken piece of fencing like it was a fallen comrade. I sipped my coffee and nodded. Actually, yeah. Kinda. But even as the dust settled, I couldn't shake the feeling. Karen's brand of fury didn't just burn, it simmered. She hadn't truly lost until she disappeared, and Karen's silence was never quiet. Something was brewing. And for the first time, I wasn't just annoyed, I was watching, because I knew this wasn't her final act, not by a long shot. It started as most Karen plots do, with signs, not just 1 or 2, dozens. Overnight, she'd planted small wooden markers along the edge of her lawn, each one stamped with shaky lettering that read, HOA boundary, no crossing. Some had arrows. One even included a laminated paragraph citing a community perimeter clause, which, spoiler alert, doesn't exist. They were hammered into flower beds, between hedges, even halfway up the walking trail, like she was redrawing lines on a battlefield only she could see. Neighbors started calling it the Great Post-War. I just called it desperation. But the piece de resistance came when she showed up at City Hall, clipboards in hand, binder overflowing with maps she'd printed from Bing of all places, ready to argue with the zoning commission. "This man's land infringes on communal vibe territory," she declared as if that were a legal term. The clerk blinked. "Ma'am? Vibe territory?" Undeterred, she ranted for 15 minutes about how zoning laws should be emotionally reactive, citing property aura, visual pollution, and somehow lawn density. The commissioner asked for her permits. She had none. The city shut her down, again. By the time she left, red-faced and muttering, even the receptionist was whispering, "That's the HOA." Back in the neighborhood, things hit a boiling point. Chad had finally had enough. At the next HOA meeting, this time with more people than I'd ever seen attend anything besides the annual potluck, he stood up and made it official. "We're holding a vote," he said. "Karen's actions have embarrassed this board, misrepresented our rules, and exposed us to legal complaints." He glanced at me, gave a subtle nod, then continued, "It's time." The motion was to place Karen on formal HOA probation, limiting her ability to file complaints, speak at meetings, or represent the HOA in any form. The vote wasn't even close, nearly unanimous. One guy abstained only because, as he whispered, "I'm still scared she'll key my car." But like a villain in the third act of a movie that just won't end, Karen wasn't done. Just 2 weeks later, a letter arrived, not from her, but from a lawyer. Well, someone who claimed to be one. It was a formal complaint filed against me, citing harassment, reputational damage, and illegal surveillance. Chad nearly choked laughing when I showed it to him. I responded with a simple packet, timestamps, video footage, city zoning verification, and a notarized copy of my deed. Barry, my cousin and unofficial legal bodyguard, attached a cover letter that began with, "If this is your best, we welcome your worst." 2 days later, her complaint was withdrawn with no comment. And then, silence. No signs, no letters, no stomping around with gnomes or late-night fence measuring, just quiet. And then the real sign appeared, big, white, and beautiful, "For sale." The gossip hit the block like wildfire. "Karen's moving? She's really leaving." One neighbor left a card on my porch that read, "Congratulations, you HOA'd the HOA queen." Chad summarized it best. She finally HOA'd herself out. The smell of grilled onions and charcoal drifted through the neighborhood as folding chairs and laughter filled the end of my driveway. It was the HOA's unofficial "We Survived Karen" celebration. But nobody said that out loud. The banner said it better. No ATVs, just burgers. Even Chad brought a cooler of root beer and raised a toast. To fences that stay up, lawns that stay whole, and rules that stay honest. The crowd clinked their cans together, and I swear the grass looked greener that day. Just as the sun began to dip behind the rooftops, a moving truck rolled into Karen's old driveway. A woman stepped out, sensible shoes, calm smile, and a clipboard in hand. The street went silent. She waved. "Hi there, I'm Karen, just moved in." The collective inhale was audible, then she chuckled. "Don't worry, not that kind of Karen." I exhaled so hard my grill nearly tipped. "Well, welcome to the neighborhood," I said. "Hope you like peaceful mornings." Later that night, I sat on my porch with a root beer in hand and Max curled up at my feet. The tire tracks in my lawn were long gone. The gravel was back in the shed. But the silence? That was the real victory. Peace, I realized, isn't just the absence of chaos. It's a lawn without tire tracks. It's the freedom to enjoy your own space without someone revving through it in neon pink. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. You don't have to yell to be heard. You just need to know your rights and stand on solid ground. Don't let a clipboard bully shake your foundation. Don't let noise win over truth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't louder, it's smarter. And if you enjoyed this wild ride through the suburban battlefield, give this story a thumbs up, leave a comment with your favorite moment, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next tale of HOA havoc and neighborly justice. Have a HOA horror story of your own? Drop it in the comments. We just might feature yours next.